All right. So good morning, guys. We're over here at Mike Crisler's shop. Hey, guys. We're online here. We're ready to go. Okay, so we're going to start over here at one end of Mike's shop with some stuff that he's made. Okay, so here we are. And good morning, Mike.
Howdy, howdy. No problem.
So what we're showing today is how Mike uses the one-way bowl coring system to get 3, 4, 5 bowls out of one big block of wood. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike. He will start explaining the process.
Good morning. Thank you guys for joining. And sorry, my shop is not neater. You get to see 2 views of it. I've owned this shop for over 30 years. So there's 30 years accumulation of pieces of stuff that I knew that I could use for someday. Most of the time, it didn't work out that way. And first question is, why do we want to core for a bowl? What Ralph said is so you get more out of one. This is the result of coring 2 pieces of mahogany, either side of a log. The outside one is 17.8 inches wide. I tried to make it 18, so Floyd said that I couldn't make an 18 on an 18-inch lathe, but I tried. I got close. And this will be the inner bowl. These are 2 cut with the same knife. If you move the position of the knife to change the diameter, we'll look at that. The next knife, the next knife. And the big one is actually the outside once I cut with the largest knife. This is what the knife looks like. So the knife goes in like this to make this wood. We'll see that in just a minute a little more. So let me get these out of the way. You can also use this carefully to make natural edge bowls. This is a natural edge mahogany. It was a stunning piece of wood. It didn't take but just 2 cuts. And I had this bowl, and for whatever reason, this one, all the bark stuck to. That's a real blessing. Here are natural edge bowls that I haven't finished yet. But you can see there's 1 knife, 2 knives, 3 knives, pops this out of 1 piece of tree trunk. And this, again, happened to be mahogany. Now, here's a typical blank. Got that good? Yeah. What do you know about a blank? This one is 13 7/8 inches in this direction, and it's only 13 in this direction. So it had significant change in the spacing of it while it dried. And that's why we're going to talk about that when we get to the machine. Now, if I had this piece, I could think about how many bowls could I make out of it. I got a drawing here. Sorry about that. A drawing here of what the knives do. There's a number 1 knife. There's a number 2 knife. And there's a number 3 knife. And today we're going to use the first 3 knives, if we're lucky, to cut this out. Now, how would I prepare this for use? I originally drilled this 1/4-inch hole in it, and I cut this round, close to being round on the bandsaw, before I painted it with the sealing stuff and let it dry. So now I put this back on the bandsaw here, and I cut it again to 13 inches because that's my minimum diameter. And you don't have to do that, but that saves me having to do a bunch of interrupted cutting, which I'm not good with. Then I take this thing. We talked about this at our last meeting about how dangerous it is to cut something that's round. And it is, I can tell you that. Don't ask me how I know. So I got this device. This is called a log mill on some Carter products. And so I take a blank like this, run it on the log mill, dog it down real good. I've got a piece for the miter slot there. And I slide that through my bandsaw, and I get now a blank that's got two sides that are relatively parallel. And again, that'll keep me from having to do a lot of turning to get rid of. You can see all this mess I made with the chainsaw here. So now, instead of having to turn that off, I'm going to saw it off in one piece. Let me get rid of this piece. It's a,
Oh, my foot.
it's a jump piece. So when I did that, here you see the blank has been cut to be parallel, ready to go. So what I did was I mounted my big faceplate on it. Now I have to brag about doing that. This is how I do that. I stick the little pin in the hole in the middle that I made just a second ago. This piece screws into my chuck and lets me get the chuck relatively centered on here. So again, I don't spend so much time turning air. Then I put this on usually with 6 screws. I use the sheet metal self-tapping screws or cheap metal screws. I can get them at Home Depot. I put 6 of them in there. This is not a particularly high stress operation, so that seems to hold good. And I've marked this special part with the blue tape here so that when I come back in to redo the first core, I can put this back on. So on the first core, I can make an accurate tenon on the other side so I don't lose any more lumber than I have to. And then the most important thing, you can see we've already got some spalting in this one, so this may be pretty nice, if you got to put this tenon on here. And I use one of these little devices from Rockwell, or a piece of wood. This is a 4 1/8 inch tenon. It's pretty important that I get that to the correct size, and you'll see that in just a second. Now the tenon also has to have the correct angle. Can you see that angle? And that's done. I did that with this fantastic knife here. I wanted you to see this knife. This was from my first set of lathe tools in the late 70s from Craftsman. And it was a point tool. It had just basically a right angle, a spear-like thing. I ground that down, sorry about that. I ground that down to be in 78 degrees. That is the claimed angle of the chuck jaws for the chucks that a lot of us use, not the real expensive chuck, but the medium price chucks. Now using that to make this last cut, I get a pretty good place where my chuck jaws are going to have a really good contact with this piece of lumber to hold this tightly. So that's how I get the machine, the blank ready. And now we're going to go over to the lathe with this blank and try to get started. So stand by.
Little view of the shop while we head back over to the lathe.
How big is the shop?
Here's the shop, Mike.
Now, are you talking from the tax assessor's point of view or bragging?
From the wood turner's point of view.
When I purchased it about 30 years ago, it's 20 by 50. It did not have the upstairs. I added an upstairs to it, so that gives me about 1,500, 1,600 square feet that's usable. Since that time, I've added a patio on the back where I do my bowl blank preparation. I take my chainsaw back there, and that's where I can do the bowl blank preparation. So is that okay? You understand?
Yes, sir. Thank
Yes,
you.
and now,
Hold on.
Dave, if you will, just for a second, answer your question. I do have this for sale today, in case you're worried about doing bowl blank preparation. This will take care of most of the ficus trees in Miami.
Oh my gosh. Is that a 36 inch?
No, it's 48.
Oh my God.
I'm kind of gay for chainsaws. Okay, so Let's see if we can get the camera here going okay.
We're good.
Down a little more accurate. All right. Here you recognize our bowl blank, I hope. You recognize that we had the little shape here. Excuse me. Okay, and this is our 4 1/8 inch. And what I want to point out is, remember that we have the grain going this way. That was going to the distance over there that was very different would be in this grain. So the important point about that is when I put this chuck on here, here's a big chuck that Nova makes. I want to line up that hole with the grain direction. Give me a second here. And I like to do it like this, so I know that I've got good contact with the face of the piece, because that's how I've machined flat. The back of the blank is not particularly flat or good. So, and notice I'm getting close. Now I got it tight. Now what that means is that I may now have the entire surface of these jaws contacting the wood. If you had it so this was way out like so, you'd only have the 8 points poking into the wood and making it go in some. It wouldn't be near as strong a hole. So having this one like this really gives us a great strong hole. Okay. Now, if I'm lucky, I'm going to put this on the lathe.
What kind of lathe are you turning on?
This is a Laguna Revo 1836. I purchased this a year and a half ago. It's the second Laguna I've owned. The first one I bought used, this one I bought new. And what's interesting about it is this piece down here that's close where Ralph is, an extension, I can bolt on to here where I have it now, or I can put it down 8 inches and turn 25-inch pieces. So this gave me the ability to get to a big bowl if I ever needed it without having to have the very biggest lathe. And also this extension, which is kind of unique, can bolt on right here on the side of the lathe for doing the back of large objects as well. So it's 2 horsepower. 2 horsepower is just about the minimum you can use to do this coring. With less than that, it just doesn't quite cut it. Is that okay? Okay. I have a little jig I made. Important word here is banjo. And this lets me put this assembly, I think you need to come down with the camera, put this assembly at the right spot, so there's no chance when I put the big knife in here that I hit the chuck. So that's what that's for. And if you'll notice, I can loosen this up, slide it up. I can put the knives centered, put the knives wherever I want to. So let me tighten this a little bit and get my big knife here. Now, notice that this blank is not quite big enough. But touched right there. So I'm going to scoop my piece that way just a little bit until I have pretty good contact all the way around. That'll give me the outside of the bowl pretty good. So now,
Can I ask a question? I hate to bother you. Are those the tightening fixtures that Lucas makes, or are those the ones that come with the one-way chuck?
those are what now?
The tightening, the levers, are
Yeah,
those?
they're the Lucas ones, yeah.
They're the Lucas ones.
They're
Okay.
much better. Okay, so now I take the number 2 knife, which makes that middle bowl. And I notice that that's where it's going to cut. Now, that measures to be a little less than 1 inch. Hold on, we're doing an adjustment here. Okay. Okay, that measures to be a little less than 1 inch. And so for a 13-inch bowl, using the standard convention of allowing 10% fat in its diameter for the first turning, 1 inch is probably not enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this second bowl in maybe another 1/4 inch, like so. I'll cut the first one out here, the second one in here. That gives me 1.5 inches. And then I'll bring the last one in so that, let me make a mark right, 1.5 inches. Okay. So there's my 1.5 inches for the second one. Now the inside bowl is going to be a nice salad bowl, so its diameter doesn't really make a lot of difference. I put my little knife on and I see that I've got almost 1 inch there. So that's probably pretty close to being okay for that bowl. So I might go in just a little bit. And that looks good right there. Tighten down Lucas's things. And now I'm ready to cut. So before I do that, this knife is pretty strong, but you put it all the way into the wood, it's clearly going to bend on the end. So we have this piece here that watches it go inside. You're going to turn down just a little. Okay, so now you can see how this fits right here. So I'm going to put that over here. I'm going to line it up, put it under this knife. Okay. Now before we started this, just touch the front with it. There we go. Before we started this, I lined up the point of this tool. That's the point right there. We'll show that again in a little while. I lined up the point of that tool by taking my center, putting it in the lathe, lining it up right on the very center of the cut line. So that's how you're supposed to do this. So I claim we're ready now. Everything is tight. This is tight. This is tight. I have one of the finest looking handles I ever made. Notice the beautiful taper and detail on that. Okay. So stand back. I'm able to go up to about 500 RPMs doing this because the bowl is pretty round. But since the back, I didn't bother cleaning up at all. Still got all the stuff in it from the original chainsaw. I may get a little vibration. So we'll start off lower, where everybody here is backing up.
Eye protection and breathing protection is advised.
Yeah, that's good. If I'm doing Norfolk pine or camphor or Bashovia, or the other one is Bob Neese gave me, tamarind. Tamarind is terrible for me. It really bothers my throat. The mahogany doesn't as much. Now, if you notice right here, I can pull this thing in. And we'll raffle turn this camera just a little bit so you can see this. This is my dust collector. It's on the drawer slide here. Now I can turn that on. When I'm doing this, it's noisy, I realize. I can turn that on and I have almost no dust coming toward me. I know you don't want to miss the attractive tone quality of my voice. I'm not going to wear the mask. All right, here we go for the small bowl. The shavings get kind of hot. You notice it's making a pretty good size cut there, not quite 3/8 of an inch. So that's a lot of stuff. So I ease the knife on into it. I'm watching right here. Basically, I'm watching to make sure I move in about 1 inch. Okay. So I'm in where the post is lined up with the post here. This is going to be the time now that I move this on into the cut. Make sure it's lined up again, that it's not catching. And now I'm ready to go again. Now, Ralph was smart. This is moving. This is a kind of an add-on. This was a Lucas modification, not one way. This is to, when the brace is trapped in the groove, you don't need that. But I can now use the brace later on as a steady rest or as a rest when I'm inside the bowl wanting to clean up a mess or two. So that's for the outside.
Float?
Yeah, that floats now.
Okay.
Thank you. Better word. I'm watching to make sure the shavings are bubbling out. As long as y'all, everything's happy. When they stop bubbling out, I need to start moving back and forth like this to make certain that I'm pulling the shavings out. Depending on where it is in the cross grain, in grain, so forth, sometimes it doesn't eject shavings very well.
You want to run the dust while you're doing that. Go right ahead.
Okay. Now, if you notice right here, I brought this in all the way. That's where I know that I need to readjust everything. And right before I did that, I made sure I turned it so that there were no shavings packed up in there that would cause me to get a catch when I started. This is a really dry piece of wood. Ralph just noticed that because it's making lots of dust. It normally doesn't. When it's normally wet, which is when I typically cut these, this is when I'll begin to have the shavings packing up. So I'm going to turn this dust collector on and be quiet.
Hey, guys, FYI, from our side of the computer, you don't hear the dust collector and you can hear Mike real well anyway. Hey, Mike. I don't know if you guys can hear us, but we can hear you guys talking well. And the dust collector isn't making a lot of noise either.
There was a noise that you want to hear. There was the beauty of this lathe. You heard that squall. Y'all want to hear that squeak? Yep. That was the belt squeaking. And so the way this thing is all put together with the chuck and so forth, that'll squeak momentarily before you get a real jam. So that I adjusted the motor, which is pretty simple on this machine over here, to make sure I could do a squeal ever so often. So we're gonna readjust now. I think you got the orange hammer there.
This one?
So even though I have a very good connection with my chuck, that caused it to loosen a little bit. Now, what Lucas does to get a beautiful finish, he'll push in on the thing and go in with it, taking a little off the inside, then he'll pull out on it and go in this way to get a little more clearance and a lot nicer finish. And when you see the pictures of his bowls, you can see that it really does work. You notice I'm about as far in as we can get. So this is going to be probably close to the last cut. Everybody back far enough? That was caused by not cleaning out the shavings. That was a bunch of shavings that get packed up in the groove and cause that little catch. More squealing. What's going on is I'm cutting the very most difficult grain to cut down there. I'm cutting that end grain, if you will, at the end. And it really packs up tightly and makes that difficult to cut. So I just go a little bit slower. Again, got just a couple more cuts. And to do it, I need to be bringing this out more often. I think the headstock is moving. I got one more adjustment to make. It's actually up against the piece. Now just a few more cuts and we'll be ready. Now, the way you prevent that, if you want to prevent it, Ralph is over there, so I wasn't concerned about it. Is you put the tailstock on, which we didn't want to do for the camera, and you have an extended Morse taper piece that actually pushes in the middle of this. And you'll notice the back's not in such bad shape. That was where we made our first little catch right there. But now to get a tenon on here so I can make this salad bowl, I go back and line up my line with my faceplate over there. This will be ready to make a salad bowl out of. So there's the first one. Okay. So now I'm gonna get rid of the first knife. Come in.
Hey, how's it going?
Everything's good.
Want the air mic?
No, I didn't turn it on because I didn't want it to come on during the. All right, I want to put this back and line this up to that mark I made for the second bowl. Okay. I got some soda in there. There we go. Now this is the difficult bowl because this one, when I get it poured out, it's difficult to put the tenon on it because I have no way to hold it. So one of the things I want to do here is I want to take a little facing cut across here so that the inside of this bowl can be clamped onto my flat vacuum chuck, which is just a piece of wood with a faceplate on it and some Amazon rubber. I can put that on there with the vacuum and hold it so I can put the tenon on the back of it. So that's, otherwise there's no problem with the front being basically much less smooth than this one is. Just want to smooth this one up to make sure that it's okay. And I kind of cheated and did that up front, so it's in good shape now. But if it were like that blank over there, I'd need to change that. Okay. See if we can get this going here. Okay. Now this is where I lock it so that it won't come out from under.
So once you get inside, it's got to flow.
Yep. And I did. When I checked this, the headstock was a little loose. You know, this is one of the headstocks you can slide around. And I remember I loosened it up to think about the possibility if we turned it this way, I didn't get it tight again. Y'all were far enough back, it didn't make any difference. That's the mating call of the gecko.
I was gonna say, is there a gecko?
I have a mating pair of geckos that live in here. The guy next door grows snakes. He has 3,000 snakes next door. So good thing there's things in here that occasionally eat the snakes. I have made a huge mistake. This is the wrong knife. This is the knife for the outside, not the one for the inside. I didn't look at the number correctly when I picked it up, and that's why it's not lining up. I'm like, why is this in so far, that out so far? It doesn't mean that I can't still save the bowl, but I'm going to stop now and instead go ahead and cut the outside, see how the outside is, then I may be able to recut the inside. So excuse me for doing that.
You're teaching us.
What's that?
You're teaching us.
What'll happen is you'll end up at the bottom with not any room. There won't be a bowl at the bottom, so. And I have a shelf outside with a number of funnels if you're interested.
Because they have, Mike, they want to add, when you first started doing this, you didn't use that tool. You did it first, you turned the outside by hand.
Yeah.
And you found out it was much easier to use it.
And that 15-inch one, the big one, I did turn that by hand, but then again, I have to worry about getting all the surfaces parallel. So I had the wrong knife with the right support thing, which is why the support thing wasn't where I was looking for it. Now, since I'm going to be going outside the bowl now, this is not always something that other people do. It helped me. Excuse me. Now you see what I've done here? I've got it. I'm going to actually be cutting in the outside, and all this part that would require a lot of effort is going to become waste, I hope. Hey.
Ready? Yeah, we got, yeah, but it's
I
like,
mean, David,
like a
turn on
helicopter
the
10
red
miles
handle
away.
right there for me. Turn on the red handle so I can get a little air here to squirt some stuff off, and then when I'm done, turn it off. It's right at the very end next to the white cabinet. Sorry, but if I use my air compressor, it'll run.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, turn it off.
We can't hear it.
If when it runs,
Oh,
it'll.
oh, okay.
What I'm trying to do now is realign this, because the one thing I can't afford to have happen here is have the tool jump off of this piece. So now I got a little cut. I wanted to get this in and make sure it was right under the knife. You there?
Yeah.
And I'm almost to the point now where I'm going to enter solid wood again. You can see all this I'd have had to turn out by hand and maybe miss the curve. The air compressor also helps with. Next time we buy shirts, I recommend we don't get pockets. Mine gets so full of shavings.
Well, you're supposed to put a piece of tape over it.
I did that going into Home Depot the other day. Everybody's like, what's wrong with your shirt? you couldn't see before, maybe you can see now, is the end of my knife is lined up with the end of the support. That's when I know it's time to move the support again.
You in here, you got room?
Yeah. Okay. And what you can't see here, if you want to come up here and have a look, there's two little black lines here. And when I get the two lines lined up, I'm going to be in danger of having the knife encounter the jaws of the chuck. What I'm going to do now is set my rest up here behind it. And I'm going to take my parting tool and I'm going to make a part here on the back side to cut this piece free so that it'll be free when I actually get almost to the jaws of the chuck. You understand that? Does that make it clear?
Got it.
Okay.
There's a question over here, Mike.
Yes, sir.
The size of the lathe, I mean, if you go to do this, obviously you could use a mini lathe, but I mean, how big of a lathe do you think you need for it?
Well, they make this is the set, and that's really about how high these things are and how long these pieces are. This is the size for an 18-inch lathe. They make a 16, an 18, and a 20. And they also make a 12 for use with the smaller lathes. It's just a key of having a, I would have liked to have started this bowl without, if I hadn't made that mistake, with a sharp cutter, because the sharp cutter makes all the difference in how this works when you have less horsepower. So this the inside bowl is a 9-inch, and this is basically a 12-inch. So on a mini lathe, you should be able to get 2 out of a carefully cut thing, or probably at least a 10.5 and a 7.5. So, and again, anybody who's interested, I'll be glad to help you cut the blanks and do that. Or if you come by a big piece of wood and you want to do this, come on over. Give my hand on my, you'll love this handle. This came at Home Depot. This came at Home Depot.
What kind of wood is it?
It's red oak.
Red oak.
Almost everything in my life is red oak.
I thought maybe you stole that off of the damn broom from the house.
No, it actually came out of a piece of red oak trims. You can buy round pieces of red oak if you make expensive stair rails and stuff like that. And that's what this was. Right behind you, you'll see a couple of them. See them sticking up in the overhead?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like I said, there's 35 years of stuff here.
Stop.
Okay. Hope that'll work. And the idea is when we get close, all of a sudden this is going to come flying off of here. And that's part of the reason I'm leaving this here is so that it doesn't have a chance to impact too much more stuff. You'll notice that on a couple of these chucks, I've got some black ink. Black ink. So I can see if the chuck is rubbing, because these are a complex two radius this way and a radius this way. Sometimes they're not quite where they need to be for how my machine is lined up. So putting that black on there when it rubs off, I can tell I need to grind that a little bit. So another trick I learned from Glenn Lucas. Coming free just any minute here.
You're about on your line, Mike.
What's that?
You're about on your mark line.
Yeah,
Line.
that's what I know. Must be this one.
Why
Okay,
don't you move that parting cut out a hair, this direction?
I did.
Oh, okay.
Now, how do I get this piece off?
Chainsaw.
How long it took me to figure that out?
Chainsaw.
Yeah. So you saw what this did. This kept this thing from getting too loud back here. Well, it's not cut completely right, but I can fix
So
that.
that's what that BFH is for.
So I can fix that. And I can also use my magic marker and do some marking, undo the chuck and get to it a little easier. Then I can put it back on good enough for a rough bowl versus a final turn bowl. So let's do that, see if we can see what it looks like. Ralph told me to do this. So now I've got a pretty good bowl I can put back on there and still make a bottom. And in fact, I may make a little flared out bottom on these to make it look nicer. And I'll probably be able to go in and fix this one. So
Well, if you just go in with the right knife.
Yeah. I'll put this back on now and I'll smooth it up a little more.
Did you like make the interval a little bit smaller so that you can use the sharp knife easier or?
Yes. And you, as I, not sure you saw it. Watch your face. You know, I just saw an Allen screw fly away. So you got this much adjustment.
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah.
And before you got here, we put the big knife on the outside and we left the outside bigger. This one's probably a little smaller than it needs to be
Yeah.
because you don't want them to warp enough that they can't be re-rounded.
Got it.
But this was so dry, I don't know that it's going to go.
So you wouldn't cut it out, you just keep it in there until it dries?
No, I was using the wrong knife.
Oh,
I need to cut it out, check on it, see, but I can put it back on the chuck now
yeah.
with no trouble. Yeah, last but not least, we're gonna do one more thing. And that is that Ralph can turn his camera around a little bit.
Oh, we're gonna go sharpen a little bit.
Okay. Can you see that now?
Yeah, hold it. Right there.
This is what the knife looks like. Very small little tip. And so how I sharpen
Hold
it,
your hand.
oh, I'm sorry. Okay. There we go. And I sharpen it with this jig that they gave me. And I put the jig on my grinder like so. Pretty simple. And then I'm going to first go across this way. Then back across this way. And then finally this way. And again, a trick I learned from Lucas was don't turn the machine on, just do this. Because the bits are about 50 bucks a piece. And you turn the grinder on, in a few seconds, you can have no bit. So I can put it on here, line it up, just give it a couple of turns. Lucas has been making bowls for this thing for 25 years. He makes probably 1,000 a year. So he's developed all the tricks, and I'm real blessed to have had his DVD so I could learn how to do this. So this concludes the demonstration. Are there any questions? Good. No questions. You must have done a good job.
Did a good job, Mike. Thank you.
One of the questions someone had, Mike.
We just went over that. Were there any questions?
But he can't follow instructions. You know that.
Too bad.
He doesn't pay any damn attention.
I knocked on the door though.
He does what he
Yeah,
wants.
I did knock on the door.
Yeah.
Okay. If you don't don't have a vacuum chuck, you could just leave the bowl mounted.
Yeah.
There you
And
go.
you could do that. So I'm gonna put that faceplate back on here to get this one done.
Mike,
You'll notice, here are the two sizes of the inner bowl. So this is actually between them. I could make it as small as this or as large as this for the inner bowl, depending on what the outer bowl looks like. And that layout when you start is really important. We kind of sloughed over it, but we need to take a little more time and do that to make sure you get the product that you're looking for. But you can see now from the surface of this one, it's not going to take you long to have it finished. 80 grit is your friend. Sure.
60 grit is your favorite gouge?
And a dust collector.
Yeah.
So the reason that these bowls over here look as nice as they do is because the knives give you parallelism and then doesn't take long to smooth it. And then if your blank is not very big, notice this inner bowl here like a little candy dish. Because this blank wasn't thick enough, so the stuff was sitting a little bit further away from it. It makes a shallower bowl. You can always do that. It doesn't have to be as full and thick as that one is, or this one is. It can be a shallow bowl. And then you can lay these around your shop for people to wonder where in the heck you got that and what is it. You can make up something about how, well, this is for my dog used to get water or something.
Keep them from biting yourself after surgery.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. So that's it.
hey, Mike. Mike, can you hear me?
Yeah, David.
That's awesome.
I saw one, it was Kent, who turning wooden bowls on. Great demo, Mike.